I'm going to go through example 1 pretty quickly because I think we already did it, but just to make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page with where we're starting. We're doing dimensional analysis for conversions, so what we're going to start with is always your given information, which will include a number and a unit. So I'm going to start with 2.4 days, and I know that I'm converting 2.4 days into however many seconds that is equivalent to. So I abbreviated seconds as SEC over here. I like to start with this one because it's basic stuff that you probably can convert in your head. Most people know how many seconds are in a minute or how many minutes are in an hour and that kind of thing. We did kind of skip over this conversion factors table, but you'll need to use that in different questions depending on what we're looking for. And then the other part that I usually try to make super clear to you guys is how you're graded on these. So just by showing me the two things that I've written down so far is our given information and the unit that we're ending in, that is already earning you 3 points. So you would get a point for this number, a point for your starting unit, and a point for this. So if you set it up in this way, you can earn yourself a ton of partial credit even if you get lost as you're trying to do the actual conversion. I gave myself a ton of space because we don't always know how much room it's going to take, so I'll start with that. We talked about the whole disco thing, so I don't think I made you guys actually dance, but I definitely showed you about the disco, that whatever you have up in one corner, you're going to disco down just your units. So yesterday we should have written in our notes that we disco our units. If you didn't write that part, make sure that you're aware it's only the unit that you're bringing down. So if days is up here, I'm going to bring days to the bottom as well. I don't bring the 2.4 with it because then all of it would cancel and then that kind of defeats the whole purpose. From days to get to seconds, we're getting smaller. So do I know anything off the top of my head from days that would get me closer to seconds? And I think we said hours. So I'll go through and I'll just do my units first. If I have hours up here, I disco down those units, so hours. And then hours can go into minutes. And then I'll disco down my units again of minutes, and that would turn into seconds. The other thing I want to point out is that you should not be abbreviating things in a way that's not like a standard abbreviation, meaning that minutes, like MIN is a really standard way to abbreviate minutes. Same thing with seconds, we'll abbreviate it SEC all the time. But if you just wrote M for minutes, that's not going to be enough because M already stands for something which is meters. And we use that all the time. So in these things, like it doesn't make any sense to convert from minutes to meters. We don't have a conversion factor for that because they're measuring two different things. So I just wanted to point those out to you. Do you know what MI stands for? Miles. Perfect. So these are like standard abbreviations. When in doubt, you can always write the full word. That's totally fine. We'll have later on where we're converting to molecules and to moles. And so MOL will always stand for mole, and molecule will be abbreviated as MC. I think we talked like very briefly about that before. So going through, I'm just going to start adding points as we go. So if you are able to just do your units, you get points for every single one of those. And this is truly how I grade your stuff. Like I'll go through with a highlighter and mark little dots for every single thing that you do right. And then between days and hours, I can add a conversion factor here. So normally if it's a conversion factor you don't know off the top of your head, it would come from your chart or it would be something given to you in the problem. But here, days to hours to minutes, seconds, those kinds of things I would probably expect that you know just from being alive for 15 plus years. So between days and hours, which one is bigger? Days is bigger, so we're going to put a 1 next to it, and then you ask how many hours are in one day, and there are 24 hours in a day. And then between hours and minutes, which one is bigger? Hours. And how many minutes are in 1 hour? 60. So we're just filling in conversion factors here. And then between minutes and seconds, which one is bigger? 1 minute, and then there are 60 seconds in 1 minute. So again, each of those numbers going in here is also going to be a point. So each box generally will have 2 points, sometimes even 3 points in a box, if you had to calculate the number yourself. In this example, since we're going from days, which are big, 2 seconds, which is small. The ones are on the bottom because that's how we set it up. But if we go from something small to something big, it won't always be ones on the bottom. So just keep that in mind when we're doing our math. And then the other part that I want you to pay attention to is typing this into your calculator. So I just want to make sure we didn't rush through it yesterday. Every time we cross a vertical line, so we use those lines to kind of denote the end of a fraction, where each vertical line on the top, you're doing multiplication, and for each vertical line on the bottom, it's going to be division, because this line right here sort of represents the same thing as a fraction. So when you type this in, you're typing in 2.4 times 24 times 60 times 60, and then on your denominator it'll be divided by 1, divided by 1, divided by 1. With the units, I have days up top and days on bottom. Since I have the same thing on top and on bottom, they're going to cancel out. Hours on top and hours on bottom is also going to cancel out. And then minutes on top and minutes on bottom is going to cancel out, leaving us with just the last unit of seconds. So when I type this into my calculator, it is 2.4 times 24 times 60 times 60. We can also divide them by 1, but if you remember your math rules, anything divided by 1 is going to equal itself. Similarly, anything multiplied by 1 is going to equal itself. So anytime we have ones in any of these little railroad track kind of boxes, you don't actually have to type them in. So our answer that we calculated was, let's see if I can get the glare off of that, 207,360. But then we didn't write that number as our final answer because when we are doing any of these conversions, we're going to round to the same number of significant figures as whatever it is that we're converting. So in this case, 2.4 has how many significant figures? 2 significant figures. So 2 significant figures. So if I round that number to 2 sig figs, that means I'm looking at my first digit of 2, my second digit of 0 would round up because of the 7. So then this becomes 210,000. So all the rest become zeros. This number is just a rounded version of that number. It's still the same order of magnitude. 207,000 is still relatively close to 210,000, even though that's a lot more rounding than we're probably used to or usually comfortable with. Any questions on how we solved that one?